We have breaking news at this hour. The Washington Post reports, quote, 2 Border Patrol agents fired at Alex Preddy during Saturday's fatal shooting in Minneapolis, according to a statement sent to some members of Congress by the Department of Homeland Security that provides the first official timeline of the deadly encounter that has sent shockwaves across the country. The statement, based on a preliminary review, makes no mention of Preddy brandishing a weapon. That contradicts administration comments in the immediate aftermath of the confrontation when senior officials described the 37-year-old as a direct threat to federal officers. Joining us now is Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee and will be the chairman of that committee if Democrats win the House in November. Congressman Raskin, I want to get right to this new reporting of what's been transmitted to Congress. And I'm just wondering about, it makes me first of all wonder, what would be the legal implications of Kristi Noem trying to continue her lie in a report like this to Congress? If she were to say to Congress he was brandishing a weapon, he was a domestic terrorist, why would she be reluctant to do that in a direct communication with Congress?
Well, she might not want to be impeached for it to start off with it. She might not want a bipartisan condemnation for lying to Congress, and she might not want to be prosecuted herself, depending on the exact circumstances and context within which she serves up a lie. But look, they've been lying from the beginning about both of these cases, calling Renee Good, calling Alex Preddy domestic terrorists, claiming that the ICE officers were acting in self-defense, which they most assuredly were not. These were cold-blooded killings and likely murders by the agents that undertook to kill defenseless people. And, this is a massive assault on civil liberties, of course. These are people who are just exercising their First Amendment rights to petition in public, to freely, peacefully assemble in public, to speak and to record, because the people are the press too. And everybody who has a cell phone has the right to use that cell phone to record what's happening in public, including with agents of the government. And of course, in the case of Mr. Preddy, it's also an assault on Second Amendment rights as well, because he was exercising his right to bear arms within the confines of state and local law. He never drew a weapon. He never brandished a weapon, and the weapon was taken from him. And then even after it was taken from him, he was fatally shot, apparently around 9 or 10 times by the officials. And that's what's causing such a scandal and such outrage across the country, because it's really a violation of every right contained in the Bill of Rights. I mean, it's an absolute violation of the right to life, liberty, and property against false deprivation without due process by the government. And that's exactly what it was. And so the rights of the people are being trampled, and it is causing a major revulsion and a major reaction, as you're pointing out, and a spreading nationwide movement totally across party lines and geographic lines in the country.
And the new videos that have emerged yesterday and today clearly show that the agents, as they're firing their guns, are literally walking backwards. They are calmly actually walking backwards from what is by then a body that's now getting hit with the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th bullet or more. And there's absolutely no threat whatsoever. He may have been killed by the very first bullet fired. But they're literally just walking backwards, creating more and more safe space between them and the person they continue to fire at.
I mean, it's utterly cowardly. And I think we saw cowardly actions by these ICE officials in both of these cases. And in both, you can see officers running away from the scene of the crime, almost as if they're concerned to not be associated with it as quickly as possible. They're certainly more concerned about their own complicity and knowledge of their complicity than they are in doing anything to help the victims of the killing. But the idea that it would take 4 or 5 or 6 real law enforcement officers to subdue one suspect is just absurd and ridiculous. And law enforcement across the country is in an uproar about that. But then the idea that after he's subdued and after they have taken his weapon from him, that they go ahead and shoot him, makes it a cold-blooded killing.
You have communicated with the Attorney General about what you need to know about this investigation, and she knows you're on your way to being chairman of this committee a year from now, sooner than a year from now. She's going to have to answer this eventually. I just want to read some of what you're demanding from her, the issues you want to explore. Your message to her today said, despite the court order, local officials are reportedly still being shut out of the investigation as federal officials refuse to disclose basic information such as the identity of the federal agents who shot Mr. Preddy. The Department of Justice cover-up of these killings did not occur spontaneously or in isolation. Someone affirmatively ordered FBI agents to drop the civil rights investigation into Agent Ross. Someone affirmatively ordered federal law enforcement to instead investigate Ms. Good's widow. Someone affirmatively ordered line agents to block state prosecutors from accessing key evidence. Someone is now taking the same actions with regard to the killing of another American citizen. And that's the kind of thing that, as chairman of the committee, you will be able to get real answers to that, if not sooner.
We want to know exactly who gave those orders. We want to know who's responsible, and we want to hold them accountable. And as you're saying, that's the difference between having the gavel or not having the gavel, having the subpoena power or not having the subpoena power. But when we get it, we will make sure that there will be accountability for the killers of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. We are going to nail that down. The Department of Justice was created in the wake of the Civil War to try to enforce civil rights and justice for the freed slave population and to try to create some semblance of equality of rights under the law. Well, this Department of Justice has shown no interest in actually investigating who's responsible for these cold-blooded killings of U.S. citizens in the streets of the heartland of America. And they've moved to cover up the possibility of our finding out what is in the evidence, and they've moved to blockade investigations by real law enforcement officials in Minnesota and in Minneapolis. And I'm glad that Attorney General Keith Ellison in Minnesota and the governor of Minnesota are pushing and demanding in court that the evidence not be destroyed or removed, and that it be turned over to state and local authorities.
We've had the local prosecutor, the county attorney, Mary Moriarty, on this program, and she says she has opened a homicide investigation in both of these cases, and she is going to proceed with whatever evidence she can get. But it seems likely that the agents involved in these have left the state of Minnesota. It seems likely that the Trump administration would simply move them out of the jurisdiction by now.
Yeah, well, criminal suspects, of course, can leave the jurisdiction. That doesn't absolve them of the crime. Stephen Miller wants the people operating under his vicious, lawless instructions to believe that they have absolute immunity. They do not. They have qualified immunity, speaking legally, which means they have to be operating within the bounds of law, under the scope of their employment, and they've got to be acting reasonably. And if they step outside of that by acting unreasonably and outside of the law, then they lose that protection. Now, admittedly, the Trump Department of Justice and the Roberts Court have been doing everything in their power to try to undermine that, but it is still the law that they are not covered by absolute immunity. And one of the things that we need to do, again, operating as much as possible in a bipartisan way, is to get all Americans together to say that the rights contained in the Bill of Rights need to be fortified now by legislation. For example, everybody's got the right to be filming law enforcement in public. That's just part of the First Amendment. Everybody has a right before their door is knocked down by a government agent to have a search warrant issued based on probable cause by a neutral, independent magistrate that is in the judicial branch of government, not by the executive branch that is trying to knock your door down. It's not their warrant that's needed. It's a warrant from a neutral, impartial magistrate that can take their petition. These are the basic precepts of the Bill of Rights. They're being trampled by the Trump administration on a daily basis. And again, I just want to thank the people of Minnesota, as you've been doing, Lawrence, for standing up every day and showing the rest of America what we need to do. We need to stand up every day against this reign of terror and lawlessness by the Trump administration and fight back at every turn. And we are going to get through it, and we are winning every day, and our forces are growing all over the country.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.